Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is week 29 of the Homes and Money Realtor Mastermind, and really exciting for me because I was doing some reflection. Today is my guest is Julia Wesselkamper, and Julia was my second guest on the show. And it was October the 18th of 2022. So, I mean, think about that, Julia. We are, 8 months from that.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. It's been fun. It's been unique in the situation that other than yourself, we've had 28 other guests. And so I think that we'll start to, bring some return guests back on because obviously people have a lot of great content to share. And so I really appreciate you agreeing to do this and being on. So.
Well, I'm so honored. And I had so much fun with you the first time. And literally, this is one of the things when I have a moment, I go to your chain of, check this out. If I didn't get to watch it live, and I'll play it. And I learned something from every guest. And I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, it's I'm not a realtor. I obviously work in the real estate field with mortgage, but I've learned a ton from guests. I can think of just categorizing or putting clients into buckets, and that's the way we follow up. I remember people saying be the mayor of your neighborhood and your town, and I like that stuff has just really stuck out to me in the way that I apply that to my own business. So I think it's been phenomenal. So and quick plug, next month, Patrick and I, when I had talked to Patrick about this idea, Patrick Braddock with Real Producers magazine, when I had talked to him about this idea, he had said something at the time about, man, it'd be great to get a live event maybe every once in a while, with a panel. And so he's going to do that. The Real Producers event in Loveland on July the 19th is going to have a panel of real estate agents in a live fashion where there's a facilitator, kind of like he did with myself and 4 other mortgage professionals. So it's going to be fun to have that as well.
Love those. I think, again, it's so synergistic to have a panel and you kind of play off of each other. And, I think it's a really great presentation for people.
It is. Yeah, it was fun for me to be a part of, and it was a full room there at the Remington room, and so it's just a great opportunity. And so that's what I feel like this can be. And I know, I appreciate you saying that you watch the recordings and the quick snippets that I send out where I feel like somebody said something really profound. So that's what that's there for, and it could be used as a library. So
yes.
Okay, so taking a little different direction, we've already got your history, and there are people that listen new, so I would encourage you to go back and listen to week 2, which is where I kind of just dug into Julia's past and how she got started. But Julia, I've kind of wondered some things that I've never really asked before. And so a background to this is this wonderful event that we have in our city called Homerama. They've branched out a little bit to do City Rama sometimes, and they've changed it back and forth. Julia, I can remember as like a 25-year-old kid with my wife and having no kids yet, walking through these 3.7, $5.2 million homes and dreaming, right? I'm going to have that in my house someday, or, that type of thing. I also remember on a more simplistic level, walking through to see what people were painting their houses and, maybe realizing more that I wasn't going to have this feature or that feature, but just looking at paint colors or hardwood floors or whatever. And it was just a cool event. There's no doubt about the fact that HGTV has blown up in all of these different shows. So people love to look at houses. What what does Homerama do for the real estate community? What and I realize in you and I in small talk, it may not affect your business greatly, but what does it do for the community in the benefits that are out there, and what ways do real estate agents use that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I think for the consumer, just like you have shared your experience, it's more a point of inspo, right? Inspiration. There are diehards that literally go every year and have gone for like a quarter of a century. They're passionate about seeing what the latest trends are, and they're house people, as I call them. Not all people who own homes or property are property house people, right? But I find that the ones who are really passionate about attending Homerama are house people, so to speak. In regard to my profession and this industry, I would say that it's a celebration of some of, I'll call it, the best product out there. And that it's also fun to be with our colleagues and just have a moment to enjoy really kind of like an artistic canvas, if you will, of the latest and greatest, so to speak, and fun to network. In regard to how it impacts directly our business, I think that would be most relevant to the realtors who have the listings there or who work with those particular builders, because I do think that one, there is this, panache always that as a buyer, I bought a Homerama house, and there's a lot of celebration that comes around that and accolades and so on, kind of fun. And then it's done, and often they can even buy the furnishings, which is nice. But I think for the realtors who represent those builders, it's a great means for future client relationships for both that realtor and the builder. So they can leverage that. And then, they're very generous and open. There's a lot of hours to fill in those 2 weeks, but they're very collaborative on allowing other realtors to hold those properties as well. So for people who want to have the opportunity to meet new potential clients, it's a great thing to leverage as well.
That's great. So you have not had a direct impact per se in your business with Homerama.
No, it's more of an outreach. I've done things where I have sent Homerama tickets to clients who are loyal and true and refer us business annually. Mostly I've used it, on that platform. And for example, last year I took my team. This year I wasn't able to, but we made it kind of a fun outing for us, which I think is nice. But directly, no, it's more of kind of like another event that's happening and we share it.
Yeah. And I know it's probably more on the home builders side, but do you feel like it has sparked communities and in the expansion of sometimes now it's been more like city and urban related, but like I think of TPC Rivers Bend, right? Was that the spark that really pushed people out in that area? The neighborhood that I live in, we're right next to Foxborough. And so when it was in Foxborough years ago, so does it also serve as like a spark for a suburban location?
Yes. It's like anything, build it and they shall come, right?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have seen that in many communities over the years. And I think you just cited two really great examples. And especially like the City-Rama and such. I think one year there, it was even in Northside and kind of gave that, I'll call it some street cred. And then Northside's been hot. I don't know if it was because of City-Rama, but it certainly helped, and it brought attention there and another dimension to that community. So yes, I think that it's an investment in a location that maybe otherwise didn't have the attention. and it brought attention, and that was synergistic to the surrounding property.
Yeah, it'd be amazing to be on that committee, that because when you think about it in that way, you're pushing the suburban market in the envelope of our area, right? And so if you're on a committee that selects,
Yeah.
hey, this is where we're going. I mean, think about that. Just hypothetically, what if 2 years from now it was in Ross, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Ross is booming. And I mean, I can't imagine what it does for real estate values in the area, as well.
Right.
So yeah, that's one of the cool things about our profession and our industry, is when you could directly impact
Mhm.
the move of that thing, right?
Right.
I think about, like, you've been a Cincinnati person for a long time. I've been here for a long time. We have heard for years that eventually Cincinnati and Dayton will be all one market, right? So
Yeah.
like, when you think about it from that perspective, if they really wanted to push Homerama, maybe they would have it in Springboro or,
Mhm.
Monroe or something like that. And it would just continue to push things north, right?
Mhm. I think that's a
So,
great idea, by the way.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
They don't ask me, but we'll see.
Submit it to the committee.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, shifting gears for a second. And this, honestly, I fell out of my chair when I read this, because it was a little painful for me in the mortgage profession to realize, but it's what it is, and it's what we have to deal with. The Cincinnati Business Courier reported in I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was a feature on real estate.
Mhm.
And they had Julie back and several other people that were interviewed in there, Lee Robinson. And I guess the statistics were that in March of 2023, 38% of all real estate transactions were cash transactions.
Right.
And the reason why I feel like this was relevant to you is because it really highlighted the fact that in the luxury market, which is one of your specialties,
Mhm.
that you're seeing that more and more and more, where it's a cash transaction. Can you
Yes.
speak to that a little bit? And is that still the case 3 months later?
It is astounding, really. And I know NAR published an article as well, and I think they quoted like 36%. So same thing. It's significant. I mean, it's over a third, right? And I have shared that, gosh, unscientifically, I feel like for the last 5 years, I've seen more cash sales than I ever have in my entire career. And so it's interesting. I think that a couple dynamics are in play. One, I mean, there is just a lot of money around. I mean, there's a lot of money. Secondly, with the market that we have been in for really the last approximately 3 years, the competition has been so fierce and so extreme that people have even cashed out, their 401ks and such to be able to pay cash for the property that they want. So it's not always that there's just this discretionary cash lying around or a trust fund. It sometimes is they liquidated to make sure that they were able to achieve the purchase they wanted, because they know that they were in such a competitive state. So, I mean, we've seen all kinds of things. I mean, I know we're talking about obviously the cash component here, but we've also seen where people have, one, to the cash component, they have removed the appraisal contingency, and or if they have a loan, they've either provided an appraisal gap clause where they said, hey, even if this under appraises because I'm paying retail, I'll cover the difference. Or they're like, I've got it, just remove the contingency. As well, they've removed the contingency of the whole house inspections completely and said, look, if I can't afford the fix, then, I should be buying something else. And, or they've made the inspection clause for information only,
Mhm.
so that, the rules of engagement are identified up front with the sellers to take away that fear or concern of the seller that I'm going to get beat up after this inspection and the buyer's going to try to recoup some of their money. So all these things have been escalated and elevated in the, contract writing arena so that the buyer can get the house they want. And, people's lives change. I mean, they get married, they get divorced, the kids move out, they have twins. I mean, it's all the things, right? The retirement, the new job, it's everything, new city, they have to sell, what have you. So life happens. So people do need to trade properties, and the dynamics have driven such that whoever has the least complications on their contract most of the time wins.
Yeah. So as an agent, have you, I don't know how involved you get in the upfront process with your prospective buyers, but there are lots of different programs out there that can help you make the most competitive offer. For one, you mentioned that there's a ton of money out there and people that have cash. There's a little, in most cases, little known fact that Fannie and Freddie, which are the two big, backing servicers of mortgages, that there is a clause called delayed financing. And it actually allows you to purchase a house with cash, and then you have a window when you can go get a mortgage on that property and it's not considered cash out. So like, are you involved with clients in that regard, or do you pretty much just leave it to in your world, financial advisors and mortgage professionals, or are you kind of educating people up front on that?
I would say both. We like to provide information and empower our clients up front, and then put them in the conversations to then further explore, the details of each possible program.
Sure.
And I think the most important thing is to let them know that it's not just one way, that they have a choice and that they can customize what fits their particular situation.
Sure. On the luxury side of things, I mean, obviously it seems like there are more cash sales, on that side.
Mhm.
Are you seeing the same listing timelines, et cetera? I mean, is stuff moving, as fast when it's $3, $4, $5 million or more?
That is a really good question. I think we're in unique times, and I always try to share with the clients and my team that what is happening right this moment in our industry is not yet documented. So it's kind of like we're reading the signs and listening to the noises in the forest, and then we'll have it documented 30, 60, 90, 120 days later at the earliest. What my assessment is that yes, the market is still vibrant, as I call it. I don't know that it's exactly the wild, wild west that we were experiencing before, but it definitely is vibrant and it definitely is still competitive. But what I've observed is that buyers have waited this long. Their tolerance has increased, and they've kind of taken a position, not across the board, but in general, if it's not fantastic, I've waited this long, I can wait a little longer. So that's where it is still imperative for a seller to properly prepare and position, because buyers are educated. They're more educated today than ever. And they also have been conditioned to the dynamics of the market that we've lived in for the last several years.
Sure. Sure. That fantastic opinion there and assessment on the market. I think a lot of people, even those that are on this call, agree. Okay. Another question that has kind of come up lately, and we've talked about this on a couple other masterminds, but not at this length. There is no secret to the fact that inventory is probably our biggest issue. You and I have been through markets where the rates are exactly what they are today.
Right.
They weren't 2% 2 years before, but we've
Yeah.
been through markets where the rates are what they are today. And so in that regard, it seems like the inventory is the bigger issue. It amazes me when I sit in a closing and I hear somebody say, this house has been vacant for 20 years. And I'm like, all these alarms are going off. Like, how do we find those? Right? Like, why was it vacant? And how do we find those? And I feel like, Dustin's on this call too. Dustin has been a guest and has talked about the fact that his clients are more elderly. And so that kind of alludes to the fact that people may be sitting on houses that they own free and clear, or, maybe even own vacant homes, et cetera. So Julia, do you see that? You've been a professional for a long time. Are you seeing some of your past clients that own assets that one of your challenges from a business perspective is convincing them to sell when the time is right?
Gosh. So, it's still, so that's interesting. So I don't sell a lot of properties that have been vacant for 20 years. I'd like to find them.
Yeah.
And maybe buy them and flip them. But, gosh, I think my clientele is, I don't know, unique. And maybe that's because our average sale price is higher and such in general, even though I always say we help everyone. And I don't want to be, pigeonholed specifically in one market, because we really care about 0 to infinity and all over. But that being said, it is so personal, truly, with most of my clients. And I will say, I think more people jumped on the bandwagon maybe in the last year who were not there before, of the market has been so good for sellers, and this has to come to a halt. And this is my moment where I'm going to take advantage of it. And I have reconciled with the fact that I will probably need to rent for a little bit while I find my next property that I really love. And that might tie into the higher price point and luxury market, because in general, I mean, those clients don't need to move. And I always say, no one needs a luxury property. It's a want, it's not a need. So for them to even sell is like strategic. It's typically not a need with my clientele. I mean, that can be different in other situations, but so I think that it's really been about personal goal, like macro goals versus the micro and immediate, I'll call it, pain and suffering of that process. They're looking at bigger picture and saying this can't last forever, and I probably need to do this now.
Do you see that on the luxury market there, when you say that it's not a need and it's more of a strategic goal, do you see in the luxury market that there are bigger profits to be had in terms of the investment side of things?
In a word, yes. I think that in recollection, just for even like this year and what we have sold for clients, that yes, they've all done very well. And I think in general, and it might be a little bit of my approach with the staging and presentation and such, but in 36 years this month, which just sounds dinosaurish. Anyway, I have rarely, I truly believe it is under 3 times, which is, I'm so thankful for it, that I've had a client actually have to bring a check to the closing. That is awful when that happens. But back to your original question, and that is, are the luxury properties recouping profit in general? Yes.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there's a shortage of those as well. And I think it's just been because of all the dynamics about people's motivation. They already were living there, paying for it, happy. Their motivation to sell is strategic with the obvious equity that they're sitting on, which we know, across the country is a situation. And they decided that it was time in their personal timeline to go ahead and make the move, even if it wasn't their ideal or exact timing. They're smart enough to know, let's go ahead and do it and button it down. And then I'll walk through the next couple of steps to get where we want to go.
Right. You mentioned something that triggered a question. So I know that there's been this, especially when we went through the period of interest rates being really low in the wild, wild west, where sellers didn't really have to position their property, right? And do you see a difference in the different price points in the markets with what buyers expect? So you mentioned that on the luxury side, they're staging and positioning the house. I guess my naive thought would be that a lot of times the luxury market, the people might walk in and really want the bones of the house and say, well, I'm bringing in my interior decorator to do this, or, whatever. And so painting and staging, et cetera, may not be as prevalent, but it sounds like that's not the case. And I'm wrong. Do you see that in different price points, like $1 million house versus a $500,000 house versus a $200,000 house? Because buyers ultimately come in and want to change things.
That is a good question. And the short answer is, I think the same rules apply to all of the above, unless you are specifically deemed a handyman special or, God forbid, an estate sale or something like that. I think that buyers, back to you mentioned earlier, Robert, the home or HGTV. I mean, between HGTV, TikTok, IG, Facebook, Pinterest. The consumer is smarter and more sophisticated than ever, and they do their homework. And so the expectations, which is the basis of everything, right? The expectations are higher today than they've ever been. And with the market and the low inventory, it has driven the prices up, even if you don't have a speculative seller, so to speak, where they want to, market like retail times two, right? Even just the basic pricing schedule is higher. And so I do think the buyer still has the higher expectations. And then back to today, I think that is, again, tied into the fact that buyers have waited this long, that they are not going to compromise as much as they would have, I think, a year and a half ago, and maybe even 2 years ago. I think there was, and I saw it, and I even had people say, why are you still staging? Stuff's just flying off the shelf, so to speak. I think that was truer 1.5 years ago-ish, where you could get away with more of what, you're inferring, less preparation and maybe more compromised condition.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true today.
Yeah, I remember a time, not specifically when this was, but I remember a time when people would call an agent to come look at their house before they listed it. And they would say things like, oh, I've got to paint this and I've got to paint this. And the realtor would just say, paint everything white. It needs to be a blank canvas, right? And that made it easy for sellers. And that's kind of what I was asking is, was that it? There's that side of things, like paint everything white, make it simple. And then there's the other side of things. Let's bring in staging and lamps and rugs and, window treatments and all that stuff. So
I think that the paint everything white could have been the easier approach, that was accepted in the last maybe 2 to 1.5 years, where again, people were feeling so desperate and everybody was moved home because of COVID and working, and everyone was, busting out of the seams of their current home and so on. And they just wanted to move. And also they were kind of looking at the same walls and they just wanted to make a life change. There were all kinds of dynamics. I think that could have played more then. It's interesting. I mean, staging is really about psychology. I always say staging is not decorating. It is I use the word, which is not even a word, productizing of your property. And so always, if you want the most, you should properly prepare and productize, whether it was 2 years ago or today. So I think that's always relevant in any market. And if you would have made, X, okay, 2 years ago or a year and a half or what have you, I mean, who's to say you didn't leave 5% on the table or even 10?
Mhm.
I mean, we saw lots of double digits. I mean, 15% was not uncommon over list.
Right. Okay. My last question, and then anybody feel free to ask one, but you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that we have expanded into other markets, right? That you've kind of, as the business forces the market, that you expand into other markets. So, for example, Katie on your team is a Northern Kentucky agent,
Mhm.
right? And so have you thought strategically about your business and your team about further expansion into other markets?
Mm. You mean like other states?
Yeah, not only that, but even other maybe areas within Ohio, just to provide your expertise and leadership, et cetera, but then capture more business, for your team.
Mhm. Short answer, yes.
Mhm.
Longer answer, it takes a minute. I do have really great relationships really across the country. I mean, even in Hawaii. And I've worked hard over the years to establish those. So that is my most efficient path at this moment when I have clients who want to do business elsewhere outside of our range, which is still kind of broad. I mean, I have had listings, gee whiz, closer to Columbus than Cincinnati even. So I always thought, even back in the day, again, dinosaurish, but before we had the internet and even the cell phone, I thought, my gosh, people fly around the world for, their job. I certainly can drive up or down or around the highway, right? So distance has never been an issue for me. And especially with everything we have at our disposal today. So yes, we're in Kentucky. I think ultimately we're moving into Indiana. One of my team members has a great family base there, and that is on the schedule. I'm adding to my agent base in Kentucky. And one of my agents also is potentially pursuing her Florida license, and we would have kind of, I'll call a satellite situation there. So that is all on deck and kind of in the works. So
That's great.
yeah, I think it's smart. I think a lot of your high level national realtors do that.
Mhm. Yep. Okay, who's got a question for Julia?
Hey, this is Miranda. I had a question about that kind of goes in with, you said buyers are willing to wait now for the best thing to come up, the thing that they've been waiting for. So
Yeah.
as far as them putting in the contract, hey, we're going to do inspections just for our purposes. Do you not feel that that's a backdoor kind of way for them to potentially then try to renegotiate once they do those inspections?
Good point. And again, yes, I think that if something is serious that comes up, I mean, frankly, I even share with my clients, look, if we have a monumental surprise on the table, we're going to have to talk about it, most probably, unless we have a backup, which is as is no inspection, but still there would be a disclosure issue. So I think, again, short answer, yes. Longer answer is, I do think back to expectations are so critical and important for all and for all relationships, right? That it's kind of like rules of engagement from upfront for both principals. And unless it's something significant, I think most people honor it. That's been my experience.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think from that question, look, there's always a way to enter back into negotiations, right? Because if it's for informational purposes only, and you say, I'm out, like we got the inspection back, I'm out,
Mhm.
the seller and the listing agent always have the opportunity to say, well, why? You know, and then you present the option, and then it's okay, we'll let you out, or no, let's talk about it, right? So
Yeah.
that's a good question, and you know, I'm sure that tactic is used regularly today.
Well, yeah, and it used to be used, pre the Wild Wild West. I mean, it was used as a source of renegotiation. I mean, it was. We can be upset about it or not, but that's the truth. What I do, which I would advocate, is I always pursue a backup contract or two, and my clients know that that is protocol. It is not because I am concerned about contract one, otherwise we wouldn't have accepted it. But things happen, and life happens, and so it, for myself and my team, is our protocol, and that is to help shore up contract one so that we don't get into gray zones or unfortunate renegotiations.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, can I ask a follow-up question to that then? Do you feel having a backup offer on the table makes it harder to negotiate on offer one and keeping the seller to make any concessions with them, knowing that they have a backup?
It can. Again, as you know, our business is so relative. I mean, all the dynamics at play, right? But normally the backup is worthy and strong. And so I do think it keeps contract one honest, typically, if you negotiated a good backup.
Do you also tell offer one that you have other backups on the table?
Every time.
Thank you.
Do you see in this market, because of stuff moving so fast, that people are less likely to put backups in?
No, I think it's how you solicit and invite it. I personally do that, and I talk through permitted dynamics of what contract one has going on without disclosing, obviously, legal confidences and such. And so it is invitational more than just transactional. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
And then it's also important for the listing agent to communicate with the agent or agents who have the backups.
All right, Patrick has a fun one for you. So,
Okay.
so Patrick says, in some days are tougher than others, obviously, and established businesses certainly help activity. But even the most seasoned veterans can have mindset struggles. How do you combat the mental doubts when it shows its ugly face? And he said, sorry for the blind side.
That is one, it's so real and raw and honest and true. And I think you have to be a little masochistic to be a realtor. So there's that. I think that, gosh, so how do I personally do that? I definitely think it's kind of cliche, but I do think it's true that you really focus on the gratitude, and you look around and you just take a pause and look at, where you are, right? And you also take a moment, and somebody once quoted, like, so far I'm here, and everything I have walked through and worked through and lived through, is behind me. So I certainly can get through this. And then there are also days where you're like, I might have another 30 days in me, and you have to go there mentally. And then you're like, okay, that passed. So I think it's just kind of like a little pause and a little check, and maybe talking to a couple people and sharing how you feel, because I do think this industry is very, very difficult. And that is my biggest concern for a lot of the new agents. They got in when it was like, life is a cabaret and you literally could fall out of your car and sell a house. I mean, it is not typically like that. And as we know, I always share, every day we wake up unemployed. And then secondly, it's not enough. You have to go find the business. And then thirdly, you have to package the business. And then fourthly, you have to hold the business together and get it across the finish line. And fifthly, make sure that everybody's happy and loves you, so that then you can get more business the next day. It is a tough industry, but it is extremely rewarding. And I think the benefits are fantastic. And the relationships that are developed through the years are what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think you also have said before that you have to enjoy the fruits of your labor in order to recharge your batteries, right? I think we talked about that in the past. Like, you do have to check out every so often so that you can relax, recharge, and refocus, and then go back at it again. But you've got to put those regular recurring breaks in your life and your schedule. And like you said, the gratitude piece, for me, every time I get to my place in Florida, it's like, okay, we worked so hard, we got this. And then the day that I'm driving home, it's like, all right, back to the grind,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I hate
that's
to
so
leave.
good.
I hate to leave, but it's also like, hey, this was one of those trophies that's sitting on the shelf, right? And so let's keep going and let's pursue more, right?
Motivating. Yeah, it's all about your perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
It's the little moments, not the big ones.
Yep. So I just want to say in closing that Julia has going to get credit for a lot of new words today. We had fifthly, and we had productize our business, so we'll go on record. This is recorded. You'll get credit for those. When ChatGPT is 2 years more advanced, they'll give you credit for these quotes. So
Hysterical.
So listen, Julia, this is just as much fun as the first one. A lot different questions, a lot different topics. It's been 8 months. Speaking of gratitude, I'm very grateful for you. You have been so accepting and saying right away that, I'll do it. I'd love to. Right. So thank you so much for that. And then fun note, update. So next Tuesday, we're all off, hopefully celebrating the 4th of July. And then I'm headed across the pond for a golf trip. So I'm going to take a couple weeks off, and then following that immediately is Patrick's event. So I'm not going to compete with that. So we've got a holiday, I'll be gone, and then Patrick's event. So we'll be back at the end of July to kind of reboot and retool. And so I'm appreciative of everyone. Dustin and Miranda, you and Patrick have been phenomenal supporters of this, and we're not going anywhere. We're just taking a break to recharge. So
what an honor. I always love to be asked, Robert. This is so fun, and I appreciate my peers who joined as well. I learned something each time I talk with you also.
Yep. All right, thank you so much, Julia. We'll see you, everyone.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon, and enjoy your 4th.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Julia. All right.
Bye.
Bye.